Hi, I'm Rosie and I make stuff. In this video, I'll be making this pleated skirt from Simplicity pattern 3583, which dates to 1960. I picked this pattern up on eBay a few months ago, and unfortunately for me, it is a size 12, which is a bust 32, which means that the skirt is a waist 25, which is a little bit small for me, and I'm going to have to size it up. Spoiler alert, I did not do this very well, so please feel free to watch this video, seeing all the pitfalls that can possibly happen when sizing up a pleated skirt, and hopefully you will not do this. But anyway, I ended up with a cute little skirt, or rather a cute big skirt, as you shall see, and it's definitely one that's nice and easy to wear. Can't wait to make the waistcoat and shirt that go with it, because I think that'll be a really cute outfit. These pattern pieces are in really good condition and I wanted to preserve that as much as possible. Most of them haven't even been cut out. The instructions are a little bit crispy, so I have to be very delicate with those. The pleated skirt pattern pieces are really just squares, so I was confident that I could add 4 inches to make it a 29-inch waist. I drew out the pattern pieces onto fresh paper, starting with the waistband, as this was just a simple rectangle and I could copy over the markings and notations. There are 2 pattern pieces for the skirt body, a front piece cut on the fold and 2 back pieces. The first alteration I did was to chop 3 inches from the bottom because I'm quite short and this would drown me. And even in its finished state, it's actually still a little bit long. The original instructions only show 2 steps for making the pleated skirt. I guess this saves on space. But those 2 steps were very unhelpful and terrifying. So I decided to just wing it. This is the fabric I'm going to use. It's a lightweight brushed cotton with a small amount of wool mixed in for a little bit of warmth. It comes through the camera as teal, but it's actually a bit more forest green in real life. And I have this 100% cotton lining in a fairly dull colour, but it's a lining, so never mind. And finally I have this mint green shirting cotton for a matching shirt. So this part here is the outward facing bit of the pleat. It's the bit we see on the outside, and these tuck under like that. So I'm going to cut this down the middle and add a ½ inch. As well as adding width to the front of the pleat, I also cut the back of the pleat and added ½ inch there. This way the pleats were a bit more even and there was more fabric. So this was my first big error in this project. I did not count the number of panels in this skirt. I looked at the back panels and they both had 2 full pleats, so I assumed that the front pieces and the back pieces would be the same. And it turns out they were not the same. There are 4 panels on the 2 back pieces when they're joined together, and there are 5 on the front panel. So my calculation was based on 8, and there were 9 panels, which completely threw out the mathematics of the scenario. Lesson 2. I was very confident in my maths. Never be confident in your maths and do a mock-up, because I wasted a lot of fabric when I could have cut this quite a lot smaller, because my pattern pieces were way too big. But now back to the actual making process. So here's my lining fabric with its scallops at the top. I'm going to lay over the outer fabric and very roughly match them up. Start pinning. These marker points. I could then start folding in my pleats. These pleats form part of the waist shaping, so they are actually slightly curved. The scallops at the top help form the correct angle when folded up. This skirt is made using a flat lining technique, which is where the outer fabric and the lining fabric are sandwiched together and treated as one. I prefer this technique. I think it makes a more robust sort of fabric when it's held together like this. And for a pleated skirt, I think that's really what you need, a little bit of structure. See, I'm using lots of pins because I want to keep everything neat and tidy, and I want to keep all the pleats that should be held together, held very firmly together. You can see at the back the V's that are created by the scallop shaping. Lesson 3. Pleats are a bit of a nightmare when you shove them under a sewing machine, and I think this fabric wasn't robust enough, so I should have hand basted them, because I measured them very thoroughly before and then afterwards. They were bigger. Like, even bigger. I could then pin together my side seams. These were just straight lines on a rectangle, so I didn't pay too much attention. I just wanted them to meet up at the top nice and cleanly. And before I proceed, I decided to measure the waistline. That's the centre there, having a slight panic because it says 17 inches and that is not the right half measure. And I get to the end and oh my god, it's got a 33-inch waist. That is way too big. Lesson 4. I'm too lazy to adjust my machine, so I just use a small stitch for everything. Don't do that because it's a nightmare to unpick. It's a faff adjusting the stitch length and the tension to make it work, but do it. So I had to pick it all apart and repin it together. You can see it's fraying like anything, which is unpleasant. It's not what you want from your fabric. But I remeasured everything very precisely and pinned it all together again, in the hopes that it would work this time. Please work this time. As some eagle-eyed people may see, that's the second line of stitching which I have unpicked, so this is the third attempt. Finally, I could sew together my side seams. And another good thing about flat lining is you get a nice, well, you can get a nice finished inside seam that's all one piece. Now the zip. I've left the whole back seam open so I can insert this zip. I stitch up the back up to the marker point, which will be the bottom of the zip, and finish off this line of stitching there. Also try and reinforce that bit because it might get a little bit more wear and tear than any other part of the skirt. I then ironed all the pieces nice and neatly to where they will be sewed, so I can insert the zip and see where it goes. I actually did a spectacular job of colour matching this zip because I did not take a piece of fabric with me to the shop, which was a bit silly. I decided I was going to do this zip by hand because I'm not very confident with doing zips at the best of times and shove it under a machine seemed like a bad thing to do. So when in doubt, hand sew it. That's a rule. It's a very good rule. I could also add a decent amount of overlap with the fabric so that it definitely covered up the sides of the zip. I'm only going through to the outside a very little bit. I mean, some bits show through, but it's not too bad. It's actually probably one of the better zips I've ever put in. I do not like putting in zips. But from now on, I think I may do it by hand, unless it's like a massive long zip. And here's how it looks on the outside. And then I could finally tack down those side seams by the zip. I kind of forgot that I actually made a waistband piece in the correct size, so I just cut a strip of fabric and used a 1-inch wide piece of twill tape and sandwiched it in and ironed it so it was all nice and neat. And then I pinned it to the inside so that it was overlapping my line of stitching. I then machine stitched this on just onto the inside so the stitching is invisible from the outside, and folded over the waistband and tacked down as neatly as possible down to the other side. You can see I also added a little snap there to cover up the join where the zip is. And finally the hem. Hooray, we're nearly there. As it was a rectangle, it was just nice and easy. Turned it up by 1.5 inches, ironed it, turned it up again by 1.5 inches, ironed it, and just tacked it down. Whew! We're done. Hooray! I'm really happy with how this skirt turned out, despite me thinking it was going to be a simple job, and no it wasn't. But I've learned a lot, and this is how we learn through experience. It is too big, still too big. If I pin it back like this, you get a bit more of a vintage shape, which is more like the picture, but it's a lot more comfy to just wear on the hips. Going forward, I'm definitely going to try and size up the waistcoat and the shirt because I think they will look super cute. So join me then, and if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe for more content.